December 4th, 1942. Pearl Harbor. 6:43 a.m. A courier arrives at Admiral Chester W. Nimitz's office. The envelope is unremarkable, brown, sealed with the standard naval insignia. Yet inside lies a message that could shift the balance of the Pacific War. You can almost hear the hum of the ceiling fans and the soft clatter of typing from distant offices. Outside, the harbor is calm, deceptive. Battleships float like monuments, oblivious to the storm coming. Nimitz picks up the dispatch. It is precise, too precise. Intelligent decrypted from Japanese communications magic intercepts. Painstakingly deciphered, contains Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's itinerary. Every movement, every stop, every hour of the journey across the Solomon Islands. He reads it once, twice. Silence fills the room. There is no triumph in his eyes, no immediate relief, only the weight of inevitability. The plan is bold, audacious, and designed to strike at Henderson Field on Guadalcanal, and yet it is exposed. The Japanese Navy, master of surprise, now unknowingly offers the Americans a rare gift, knowledge. Nimitz leans back. He is conscious of the paradox. Military honor, naval doctrine, and the subtle politics of alliance obligations, these all collide here. To act is to risk escalation beyond anything the Pacific has yet seen. Not to act could mean thousands of lives lost and a strategic foothold slipping through their fingers. The room holds its breath. The intelligence officers glance at one another. They know what is possible, what is forbidden, and what might be morally unspeakable. Nimitz finally speaks, almost to himself. We have him. But how do you strike a ghost without losing your own soul? He turns to his staff. The conversation that begins is hushed, urgent, carefully orchestrated. Every option is fraught. Every choice is political. Every decision has consequences beyond immediate victory. Speed versus preparation, protocol versus results. Outside, the harbor remains serene. The battleships do not know what fate awaits them across hundreds of miles of ocean. Inside the office, Nimitz and his generals begin the slow, invisible war of decision-making, a war where information is both weapon and burden. The realization settles in. Yamamoto's plan is now a mirror. It reflects not just his intentions, but America's capacity to respond decisively, morally, and strategically. One man's itinerary has become the axis upon which countless lives will pivot. And yet, the most dangerous question hangs in the air. If you know the enemy's plan, are you allowed to strike without staining history? December 4th, 1942. Mid-morning, Pearl Harbor. Nimitz convenes his closest advisors in the map room. Admirals and generals gather, each with their own agenda, their own conscience. Vice Admiral Raymond Spruance, his steady hand in fleet operations, studies the plotted course of Yamamoto's plane. Major General Millard Harmon, responsible for air coordination, traces each waypoint with a pencil. The room is quiet, almost reverent. Maps stretch across the table like frozen battlefields. Every marking represents life, death, and the fragile line between the two. They are holding history in their hands. And yet, no one speaks of victory, not yet. The question is sharper than any sword. Do we act? Nimitz's voice is measured, restrained. We have the enemy's plan, but it is not a gift. It is a test. How far are we willing to go? Each officer is aware of the stakes. Acting on the intelligence would mean targeting a man, the architect of Pearl Harbor himself. Yamamoto is not just an enemy commander. He is a symbol. Strike, and America risks moral condemnation for killing an individual in cold calculation. Do nothing, and the Japanese may gain the initiative once more, and American lives will pay the price. Spruance speaks quietly, almost reluctantly. Admiral, the strike could be precise. We could end him before he moves again, but it is risky. One misstep, and we alert them to our intelligence capabilities. They'll change every code, every plan. And then we are blind. Harmon leans forward, hands pressed against the table. Every hour we delay, his itinerary changes. This is fleeting. If we wait for perfection, we lose opportunity. But if we act, are we judges, executioners, or just soldiers? Nimitz listens, absorbing every nuance. He knows this is more than strategy. It is politics, the alliance with Britain, the fragile truce with Russia, the eyes of a global audience watching America's choices. He weighs speed against preparation, the certainty of action against the moral calculus that cannot be undone. Outside, planes roar softly as they taxi along the runway. Inside, a single thought dominates. Knowledge is not neutral. It demands a decision, and that decision will echo through history. One misjudgment could shift the entire Pacific War. Finally, Nimitz stands. His voice carries across the room, calm but resolute. We will act, but we will act deliberately. Every life we save, every life we risk, will be our responsibility. We will strike at the moment of greatest certainty, and we will do so, knowing the weight of what we have become. The officers nod, not in triumph, but in acknowledgement of a burden none of them sought. The plan begins to crystallize a raid that will attempt the impossible, intercept Yamamoto, not for glory, but for survival. And yet in the back of every mind, a question lingers, unspoken. Can a war ever be clean? Can the right decision remain untainted by the human cost? December 18, 1942. Early dawn, Solomon Islands. The engines of the P-38 Lightning fighters hum softly on the tarmac. You can almost hear the tension in the pilots' breaths, the careful tightening of harnesses, the last-minute checks of fuel and guns. Each man knows the mission is unprecedented. Intercept a single aircraft over hundreds of miles of ocean, based on intelligence no one is supposed to have. The odds are staggering. Precision is mandatory. Failure is fatal. Admiral Nimitz does not watch the takeoff. He remains in his office, hand on a map, tracing Yamamoto's predicted course with a pencil. His face is stoic, betraying nothing, yet inside, every possible outcome plays like a reel of film. If the raid succeeds, the blow will be strategic and decisive. If it fails, the consequences will cascade: morale, intelligence, credibility, and thousands of lives lost in reprisal. For the pilots, the journey is a quiet tension, punctuated by the whine of engines and the endless blue below. They navigate by dead reckoning and celestial cues. They carry not just weapons, but the moral weight of Nimitz's decision, and the knowledge that they are hunting a man who is more than a commander. Yamamoto embodies the aggression that brought America into war. At headquarters, Nimitz convenes a terse radio check. Each report is a heartbeat, position confirmed, bearing steady, enemy intercepted. He records the coordinates but says nothing. Words are dangerous. Action, not commentary, will mark the moment. Minutes stretch into hours, and then it happens. The P-38s sight the formation. Pilots confirm the target, Isoroku Yamamoto himself in the lead plane. The mission, planned in painstaking secrecy, hinges on seconds. They descend, guns blazing, and the Japanese escort is caught off guard. Nimitz at Pearl Harbor receives the confirmation. The strike is successful. Yamamoto is killed. A calculated precision has toppled a symbol. And yet, there is no triumph in his voice when he reports, "It is done. The target was eliminated, but history will judge us, not just the result, but the means." In the aftermath, silence dominates. The operation was flawless tactically, yet morally ambiguous. The Allies have delivered a blow that reverberates far beyond the battlefield. Every officer knows this. The enemy will learn, adapt, and retaliate. Every act of calculated violence leaves a mark that cannot be erased. And in that quiet, the cruel truth becomes clear. Knowledge can grant opportunity, but it cannot absolve responsibility. Nimitz, Spruance, Harmon, they have struck decisively, but each man understands that success is only a moment. The war and the ethical reckoning continues. December 19th, 1940, Pearl Harbor and beyond. The news spreads with a quiet intensity. Yamamoto, the architect of the Pearl Harbor attack, is dead. Official communiques frame it as a tactical success. American morale surges. Headlines are restrained but proud. Strike hits Japanese commander. But beneath the surface, the reality is more complex. Strategy, politics, and conscience collide in ways that no newspaper can capture. At Pearl Harbor, Nimitz reviews the aftermath reports. Losses were minimal. The P-38 pilots returned without a scratch. Tactically, the operation is a triumph. But history is not made solely of numbers. The ripple effects are already felt. Japanese forces are stunned, their morale wavers, operational plans are disrupted. Yet Nimitz knows that symbols die harder than men. Yamamoto was one man, yes, but the ideology he embodied will persist. The staff debates quietly. Some officers celebrate the precision. Others hesitate, considering the precedent set by striking a targeted individual. Protocol has always demanded engagement between forces, not calculated assassination. Spruance says softly, almost to himself, "We have removed a general. But what are the codes we revealed to do it? They will never forgive or forget." Across the Pacific, Japanese planners adjust their strategies, more cautious, more secretive. American intelligence gains are temporary. The Allies have proven they can strike anywhere, but the cost is not just measured in lives. Every success carries moral weight. Every victory, a question that cannot be ignored. Nimitz walks alone along the harbor that evening. The battleships are dark, anchored still. He can see the lights reflected in the water, the calm hiding the complexity of the war. The question that haunted him before the mission now presses harder. Can the right decision ever be made cleanly? The answer is silent. There are only consequences. Every officer involved feels it. Triumph is muted by responsibility. Opportunity was seized, yes, but opportunity always carries a shadow. Every tactical gain is inseparable from the human, political, and ethical cost it demands. And in that shadow, the Pacific War becomes not just a conflict of fleets, but a moral crucible, testing the judgment of those who command, the courage of those who strike, and the conscience of history itself. December 1942, months after the mission, history does not record Admiral Nimitz's face as he considers the aftermath. There is no parade, no ceremonial applause. Yamamoto is gone. The strike is hailed in the press as a decisive blow, but the true measure is less visible and far more enduring. In the quiet rooms of Pearl Harbor, in the strategic briefings and intelligence reports, the moral ledger is written in invisible ink. The Americans gained a momentary advantage. Japanese plans faltered. Guadalcanal's defenders were relieved of an imminent threat. Lives were saved, in numbers impossible to calculate precisely. Yet the victory is hollow in one essential way. The ethical compromise is permanent. To act on such intimate knowledge, to strike a single man across vast oceanic miles, changes the very nature of warfare. It demonstrates that the balance of power is no longer absolute. It is fragile, contingent, and, at times, morally compromised. Allies abroad register both relief and caution. Britain notes the precision with guarded admiration. The Soviet Union watches quietly. The political calculus of alliance, national pride, and wartime protocol is altered in ways impossible to reverse. Nimitz's decisions sent a message. The United States can act anywhere, strike decisively, and yet must now live with the repercussions. In retrospect, the strike embodies the paradox of command. Knowledge grants power, but responsibility cannot be shed. Yamamoto's death shortened some battles, but it could not shorten the war. Every future engagement is measured against that moment. Every officer who made a decision carries it silently, as if the ocean itself whispers a cautionary tale with each swell. The quietest truth remains: one man's plan was destroyed, yet the war persisted. One symbol was eliminated, yet the forces that shaped history carried on. Nimitz's choice was correct in outcome, but it cannot escape judgment in principle. Strategy and morality are never fully aligned. Every gain is inseparable from what is lost: innocence, ethical certainty, the comforting illusion that war can never be clean. And so, when history finally speaks, it will not speak of triumph alone. It will speak of burden. The strike on Yamamoto is remembered not just as a tactical masterstroke, but as a quiet, enduring verdict on the human cost of knowing too much and acting anyway.